Okay, please take your seats, thanks. Well, thank you everyone for coming to the reunion this weekend. We're delighted to have you back here on campus. I want to especially thank all the reunion committee volunteers who've worked tirelessly over the last few months encouraging everybody back. We've got a record attendance at reunion this year. We think we're probably approaching somewhere close to 700 people have come back. So give yourselves a big round of applause. I know Ted mentioned my colleagues this morning as well, but I do want to make a special thank you to the incredible Alumni Relations reunion team, led by Cindy Charlesworth, if she's here, Kayla Heaslip and Sylvia Jones. They've done an outstanding job. So I'm honored to introduce our panelists this afternoon. I'm going to start at the far end and work this way. We start with David Bach, who's Senior Associate Dean for Executive MBA and Global Programs and Senior Lecturer. Dean Bach's research and teaching focuses on business-government relations, non-market strategy, and market regulation in a globalizing world economy, with particular emphasis on the regulation of financial markets. In 2011, he was named one of the top 40 business school professors under 40. Next to David, Olav Sorenson is the Frederick, Frank, and Mary Tanner Professor of Management. Professor Sorenson's most extensive line of research examines how social networks affect transactions, thereby shaping the geography and evolution of industries. Professor Sorenson is director of the core curriculum at Yale SOM and co-directs the initiative on leadership and organization. Next to Olav, we have Art Swersey, Professor of Operations Research, who really needs no introduction, having taught most of you. I will say a few words in case you didn't know, but you probably do. Professor Swersey's expertise is in quality management, operations management, and mathematical modeling. In 2012, Professor Swersey was named one of the world's 50 best business school professors by the business school website Poets and Quants. Next to Art, we have Kyle Jensen, Shanna and Eric Bass, Director of Entrepreneurial Programs and Lecturer in Entrepreneurship. He's an entrepreneur, developer, and scientist. His academic research spans computational biology, intellectual property, and the sociology of science. Before joining the Yale SOM faculty this year, he co-founded a number of successful ventures and now works with numerous Yale startups. Next to Kyle, we have Ellen Shuman, managing partner at Edgehill Endowment Partners and a member of the class of 1984. Ellen is a leading practitioner in the endowment and foundation investment management field. Ellen founded Edgehill Endowment Partners to generate strong investment performance exclusively for nonprofit organizations. Prior to her current role, Ellen served as Vice President and Chief Investment Officer at Carnegie Corporation of New York. Ellen received the Institutional Investor Award for Excellence in Investment Management by Foundations in 2006 and received Institutional Investment Magazine's Lifetime Achievement Award in Investment Management for Foundations in May of this year. I'd like to now invite Ellen up to the podium as she will introduce our very special guest moderator for this session. Ellen.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill Donaldson, who is leading our panel today on how SOM has evolved. And Bill, it is wonderful to have you here to share your perspective with the reunion classes, since really it's only the class of 1979 that had the opportunity to experience your leadership. They're one of the 7 reunion classes that are here today. Most of you in the audience are experiencing this new iconic building for the first time, which I think is a powerful symbol of SOM's growth and our evolution as a management school. And yet, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bill and his commitment to establish what we learned this morning was a quirky new professional school almost 40 years ago in the fall of 1976. And Bill's leadership in all three sectors, business, government, and education, makes him just a remarkable role model for the students and alumni of SOM. This career exemplifies SOM's mission that we talked about this morning to educate leaders for business and society. So I'm going to just mention a few highlights of Bill's career. First of all, his service in the private sector, founding the eponymous Donaldson, Lufkin, and Rett, serving as chairman and CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, and also as chairman and CEO of Aetna. His public sector experience began with a stint in the Marine Corps. He was Undersecretary of State for Henry Kissinger, counsel to Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, a member of President Obama's Economic Recovery Advisory Board, and is now on the FDIC Systemic Resolution Advisory Committee, so working for both Republicans and Democrats. In the nonprofit sector, he served on many boards, including the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And Chris, thank you for saying Carnegie correctly. Very few people do. But in academia, Bill has served his alma mater. And as you know, he was a member of the Yale Corporation. He served on the Yale Investment Committee when I was on the staff at the Yale Investment Committee. But ultimately, we're all here in this room today because Bill was our first dean in that fall of 1976, when Yale University launched a professional school called the Yale School of Organization and Management, whose purpose was to educate leaders for society and whose students would work across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors throughout their career, as Bill has done with incredible aplomb. So please join me in welcoming our founding dean, Bill Donaldson. So great.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We got to get down to business now. Needless to say, I'm really honored and pleased to be here, particularly in this fabulous new building, and to see all of you here and to see what this represents in terms of what SOM was at the beginning, which was nothing. And I want to have an opportunity for my fellow panel members to tell us about how they see SOM has evolved during their career here. The only one that goes all the way back is our Swersey. We found them with black hair and looking, bit of beard. But I'd like to just briefly tell you how I got involved and what I saw. And I really want to have it be brief, because I know that the panel has a lot to say, and I hope that all of you will have something to say, because you've been observing the way this place has developed. You've been here, graduated from here, now you're back, and that says something in terms of your loyalty to the institution, to your class, and to Yale. You know, Yale managed to get along for 300 years without having a school of management or a business school or whatever you want to call it. And thanks to the generosity of the Beinecke family, and most particularly Bill Beinecke, who was a colleague of mine on the Yale Corporation, there are a lot of Yale alumni that were pushing for Yale to have a business school. And Bill was a proponent of that on the Yale Corporation. And finally, the Yale Corporation decided that, yeah, indeed, we ought to do that. And so the school was founded, and then the then president of Yale, Kingman Brewster, approached me as to whether I would be interested in, and I don't think he said it this way, capable of with my lack of PhD and my lack of academic credentials to become the first dean. And we were discussing a little bit here the word entrepreneurial. The less qualified I thought I was, the more the entrepreneurial challenge of starting a new school and a 300-year-old university and devoting it to a mission that was not being particularly developed in the management school hierarchy around this country. So to make a long story short, I agreed to come and without the credentials and come and figure out what the school should be all about and help recruit it and put it together. And I did travel around the country a little bit. I went out to Stanford and talked to R.J. Miller, who had been the president of the Ford Motor Company and was then the dean of the Stanford Business School. And I said, as I start to talk around, it seems to me there ought to be many aspects to this school. It shouldn't be just a business school. It should be public and private management, maybe, or nonprofit and public. And R.J. Miller said at that time, he said, well, we tried that out here at Stanford, but they wouldn't let me do it. I got one section in the Stanford Business School that they allowed to be a nonprofit public section of the school, but there was business school through and through. Anyway, when I got back here to I say take over, there wasn't much to take over. We were delegated some faculty. There had been faculty in Yale College, the organizational behaviorist faculty and the administrative science faculty who'd been teaching PhD candidates in Yale College and teaching undergraduates. And we, of course, had none of the dimensions that I and others felt ought to be part of this school of organization and management, public and private and nonprofit. So we were given some great faculty members, including Mr. Swersey over here, Professor Swersey, but we also had to go out and recruit all sorts of people coming to teach here, and of course that was not necessarily an easy thing to do because the faculty had different ideas about what should be the qualifications for coming to a school like this. So anyway, we struggled with that. We struggled with a smaller campus than you now have, and I'm startled by what's here today. But basically, I think that the topic of today's panel is has the school evolved, or how has it evolved? And I think there may be controversy amongst you all in terms of your own individual visions of what it is or what's evolving into, and clearly the whole globalization, everything that's going on in the world now is an environment in which a school that purports to do what it does has a very changed and expanded mission. So I'll shut up except to say that we never could have gotten it off the ground if we haven't had the enthusiastic support of some of the faculty that came to us from administrative sciences and some of the faculty that came from outside the school, and most particularly the students who were attracted. Most of the students who came here originally could have gone anywhere. They could have gone to law school, they could have gone to traditional business school, they could have gone anywhere. They came here, maybe because it was Yale, but they also liked the definition of what was going to go on. And they proved that by exercising their entrepreneurial nature, if you will, not only by picking this place, but also by having a real hand in developing it. And those early days were very exciting because we were all in it together, trying to put into being what the school's aspirations were. So I'll stop there and get back to the subject of how has the school evolved, and then I'd like to see us open it up to comments and observations. And I hope people will give the freedom of the academic institution in which we now stand and sit to say what you think, to give your observations about the directions you see the school going in and the directions you think it's not going in. And then so the podium is open. But before we get to that, let me go to my colleagues on the panel here and ask them, if they will, serially. I'm gonna pick on Art Swersey, because he's the only guy who's been around here as long as I have, to start us off, and then let the rest of the panel chime in. Arthur.
Okay, thank you, Bill. You know, it's interesting that the first brochure that SOM had was this little 8x10. I even think it might have been black and white and not in color, but I'm not, it was a long time ago. And it showed a picture of Dean Donaldson in front of 56 Hill House Avenue. And I've said this before at other meetings, but he had this expression on his face as if to say, something behind me in this school really exciting is going on. And I think that initial feeling that we all had about the original School of Management, I think there's still holds. It's a very different situation. We don't have black and white brochures that are 8x10. We're far from that. We have this new glorious building. But I think we still project the same image that something exciting is going on here. And I think that's something that's been constant throughout the years. Sure, there have been changes within SOM. We have far more international students now than we ever had before, so that's a huge change. But it's mainly a positive change. We've also made changes, as you know, in hearing from the dean this morning, with increases in outreach to the global community. And I think the Global Network, the Masters of Advanced Management are terrific initiatives that build on the Yale brand. It's easy to say, well, we should have thought about doing that before, but it took Dean Snyder to come in and have that idea, and it's been a fantastic idea that's going to have it's already had a major impact on the school. In terms of the curriculum has changed to some extent. I think I'll let Olav talk about that because in particular there have been some changes in the core. But in terms of the culture of the school, I think the culture is still intact in the sense that sure, we don't have the Hall of Mirrors anymore. We're all looking for it. People came into the building and they're all looking for the Hall of Mirrors and they're saying to me, where's the Hall of Mirrors? It's funny that everyone says that. We all think that. But I think the Hall of Mirrors is going to end up being in the area by the Sol Lewitt artwork, the Ligon and Lamson area that they donated. I think that's becoming the new Hall of Mirrors. You can't see it now because all of the furniture was taken out, but I think that's going to become the new Hall of Mirrors where people will congregate. It just takes a little while for that to evolve. So I think, you know, the culture of public and private, the sense of contribution to society, it's still here. It's still strong. We've evolved. We're not the same school that we were when we first started, but that's inevitable. But we've evolved. We've had our ups and downs. Those of you who were here in the 80s, we can't run away from that. In the mid to late 80s, we had our ups and downs. But we got on the right track beginning around 1990, and we've been on a clear upward trajectory since then. So I'm optimistic about the school and the school's future. I see very positive initiatives, as I said, with the global network in particular is a fantastic idea. You would think most schools have partnered with one or two other schools, and we have partners, I don't know the exact number, it keeps growing every day. It's almost as many as 30 schools throughout the world. And I think that initiative is a fantastic idea, as well as other initiatives that we're in the process of developing. So I'm repeating myself, but as I said was, the school has evolved, but the basic sense of the culture still remains. And I think it's going to take a lot for that to change. I see students every day in class who remind me of the students that I've taught over the last 35 years. I look out at people's faces and I see people. It's sort of funny, they remind me of the students I had in 1979 or 1980. It's not surprising because some of them are the sons and daughters of those people that I taught. But beyond the fact that they may be related to the students I taught, there's a commonality in the way they look, the way they act in class, the way they're engaged in what's going on in the classroom. And so I think that's been fundamental and unchanged throughout my history at SOM.
Thanks. I guess maybe I'm going to ask Kyle, as the newest arrival here,
That's right.
to say a few words about what you see as you've arrived and how you see things changing. Or
So I am the newest, one of the newest faculty persons here, and so unlike Art, I have very little institutional memory. In fact, my whole existence has been in this building. I understand you were in a different building previously, so yes, I appreciate you building this one for me, and yes. My particular purview is the Entrepreneurship program, which is a huge initiative we have that is essentially offering a variety of coursework in entrepreneurship, and we have multiple faculty slots in that area. And what I think distinguishes this curriculum is that it's open to the entirety of the Yale community. So we have numerous courses that are new this year in entrepreneurship that service Yale College. It services people on Science Hill at the medical school who come here, who come into this kind of cathedral of management that we have in order to take classes on entrepreneurship. And I think that's a great thing, right? I think it's wonderful. I think it provides great value for the MBA students here. And I also think that it's an important evolution for the school because I don't think that, or my understanding is that historically we have had, what we have had to support entrepreneurs has been excellent, but we have not had much, right? So not many classes, not many programs to support entrepreneurs. My mission in life now is to make this the most fantastic school of management for entrepreneurs, whether you're going to go work in consulting for 5 years and start a business, whether you're going to be in public sector or private sector, starting a new nonprofit. And so in that sense, the entrepreneurship program here really embodies, I think, the ethos of the school and the ethos of the founding class, and yet it's kind of taking it in a different direction. So that's what I see.
great. Shall we move down to Olav? You're next to Dr. Swersey.
Sure. I guess I could speak from a few different perspectives. My guess is that the one that I'm expected to speak on is about the core curriculum, and I'll say a little bit about that. But before, I will say one thing about the culture of the school. So I've unlike Art, who has been here for longer than I have, I've actually had a career that's spanned many institutions. So I started teaching at Chicago, and then I was at UCLA. After that, I was at London Business School, University of Toronto, before finally coming here. So I've seen business school students at a lot of places. And when Jim Barron, who some of you may know, was trying to recruit me, one of the things that he kept saying was, you'll really love the students here. They really are different. And I was quite skeptical. Having taught 4 different places and feeling like almost all of the MBA students that you saw any place were almost all the same, I really didn't believe him. In fact, I didn't believe him until I actually was in the classroom and started teaching. And I was teaching initially an elective on venture capital, which is a fairly motivated subject. And I was interested because the students kept coming to me asking me things like, oh, do you think you could use the venture capital model to promote the arts? Or, is this an idea for how we could promote, development in the third world? And I thought, these are really interesting questions and very different ones that I'd ever seen teaching the course at other places. So I can't say whether or not, the culture is exactly the same as it was in 1970, because I wasn't here in 1970. In fact, I was, watching PBS then. But I can say that there really still is, I think, a dramatically different culture here from what you would see at other schools of management or schools of business elsewhere in the US or around the world. But I should say a few words about, so one of my roles here at the school now is to be director of the core curriculum or integrated curriculum. That's a new role. It didn't exist until, I guess, April. And the integrated curriculum, I think, has been one of the big, sort of changes. I think it's one of the dimensions on which Yale is really out at the forefront. I mean, really innovating ahead of where other schools of management are. And I think a lot of others are looking to us, trying to think about whether they should be following that lead. I think it makes a lot of sense. I sort of do a whole lecture about this usually to the incoming classes. I mean, what's changed is that a lot of business schools are still teaching core curricula that are based on, what the sort of job market looked like in the 1970s, because that's when they basically designed these core curricula, decided, these are the classes that we should have, these are the ways that we should divide them up. And that kind of functional orientation made a lot of sense when a large number of graduates were going out to large companies, oftentimes conglomerates like GE, ITT, a lot of companies that don't even exist today. Now you see a very different, kind of sort of place that people are going to. A lot of students are still going into management, but they're much more likely to be going into management in a smaller company, perhaps to a consulting firm, or, and I think one of the reasons that we were at the forefront of this in a nonprofit or in public sector. And understanding how to integrate between functions is far more important when you're in those settings. And so our entire sort of core curriculum now is really designed around not just giving people sort of a set of tools, but also understanding how those tools fit together to solve problems, which is ultimately what management is generally about, is solving problems, whether it's in the commercial world or public policy. So with that.
Thanks. Ellen, you want to add to that?
Well,
The great class of '84.
the great class of '84, great. So I'll speak from the perspective of, first of all, someone who has lived in New Haven since I graduated. So I came in the fall of 1982 and have lived in New Haven for 32 years, which seems amazing. And New Haven is just a fabulous city now. I mean, I was thinking about what a pioneering class the early classes at SOM were, because not only were they coming to this new school that was evolving, but they were coming to a city that was kind of in, it was a tough place to be. Yale's endowment was about $1 billion. The colleges had not been attended to for about 50 years. The place was a little dilapidated, and you must remember that as a member of the corporation. It was quite a financial challenge. And, so I think we have to really appreciate what these early classes, what they were a self-selected group of pioneers, I think, that wanted to work together to establish a great place. And there's such a contrast today between the beauty of the Yale campus and the way the city has evolved to be such a fabulous, livable, cultural mecca, really, that is so impressive. So, I feel like we really, that's a big change, but hopefully now this new building and the city of New Haven and this community are attracting just a tremendous number and quality of students here. So I think that's a big change that I think is very positive, but still we have to speak to those early pioneers at the student body. I want to talk a little bit about my own class, the class of '84. We're, I think, the only class that is over 50% women at the School of Management, right? And as Art and others have said, you know, we have a much more global student body. It's fascinating and very dynamic, and we're attracting students from all over the world. But I think a trend in business schools generally has been that women are a much smaller percentage of classes today, and I guess there are a lot of reasons for that. But so the class of '84 is very distinctive in that regard. I think finally what I think is a very positive development is something that TED, I think, has really tried to promote, and that is integrating the School of Management with the broader Yale community. And he and Peter Salovey talked a lot about that this morning. That's just tremendous. I mean, Yale has, you know, this, there's so many ways to integrate our curriculum and the interests of students with the School of Public Health, with architecture, with forestry and the School of the Environment, as Chris reminded me, and you know, just many other, the law school, for example. So I see that as just another really positive way that the school and the university are evolving together.
Thanks. Dave?
Well, thank you. I joined Yale School of Management just over 2 years ago. It's my second stint in New Haven. The first time was in the late 1990s as an undergraduate, so I'm happy to attest to all of the changes. And I was incredibly excited about the opportunity to join the team here for a number of reasons. One, that I'm a Yale undergraduate, and so I bleed blue and was excited to come back. The second is my PhD is in political science, so I deeply believe in the focus on business and society and the mission of the school. And then third, I grew up in Germany, came here as an international student, and spent almost 10 years in Spain and worked there at a very international business school. And so Dean Snyder's vision to build on the founding mission of the school and then take advantage of global trends to make that mission the foundation of Yale's global initiatives was incredibly exciting, incredibly appealing. And so I think what I like to contribute to the discussion is how the mission is at the core of what we've done globally and how we provide our students with global opportunities. If you think about it, so many of the challenges, the big issues at the nexus of business and society really cut across borders. So many of the global challenges require management skills and innovative thinking, and this school, the graduates, many of the people in the room have been contributing to addressing those issues. I think in looking for solutions, we have to look also increasingly beyond borders, learn lessons from different places. The time when people thought of emerging markets primarily as a place where you could either source cheap goods from or sell your surplus capacity in a long over. A lot of the really exciting innovations are coming out of many of those environments. And by innovation, I'm not just referring to commercial innovations, but innovations in terms of public policy, in terms of social enterprises. What is so particularly exciting, and I come back to the quirkiness that we talked about this morning, is that Yale School of Management has chosen a path to make the school more global that is unique. It's completely distinct from that of any other peer school, business school, or school of management. Most of our peer schools have a couple of partnerships, a few joint ventures, a joint executive MBA program perhaps, a couple of semester exchanges, but they really don't provide the vast majority of full-time students with a different learning experience. And what we've been able to do is put together a network of now 27 top business and management schools from around the world. We work together very intensively on curricular opportunities and connecting our students and connecting our faculty and collaborating in the development of case studies and materials. We're all very different. We're all proud of our distinctiveness, but we've been able to enhance the educational opportunities for students here at Yale the same way that educational opportunities have been enhanced in places like Indonesia or Sao Paulo or Cape Town in South Africa or Istanbul in Turkey and many of the other places. So it's been incredibly exciting. We just had 80 students from around the global network here on campus this past week. They left yesterday and they got a taste of this distinctive mission, the commitment of our faculty, the support of the alumni community, which helped us organize an amazing set of company visits. And as we were doing this, 70 Yale students met top MBA students from around the world in 9 cities around the globe. And they learned about ecotourism in the Philippines, and they learned about the European debt crisis in Spain. They learned about business model innovation in Latin America. So in a nutshell, I think we're taking a very distinctive approach, one that I think is consistent with this being audacious, not copying what others are doing in the way we're approaching global opportunities, and most importantly, in a way that we feel is very consistent with the mission of the school and the DNA of the school.
Thanks. Well, I'd like to sort of open this up a little bit to all of you, but keep the subject on the evolutionary aspect of the school and get some observations or comments from any of you as to more deep questioning of this group about the evolution, the changes you see going on. So the floor is open to that general thought for anybody that would like to. I see somebody up way on the top. Yes.
Hi, Bill. Dick Tavelli here. Class of 79. I have a question for the faculty members on the panel particularly, but Ellen, your perspective is always welcome. Over the last year or so, we've read and heard about the changes in the grading system of the school, and I'd like to get an understanding of how people perceive that affecting the evolution of the school.
Who wants to answer that? Or make an observation on it?
I think it's, this is the first semester that we've changed, there's been this change to the grading system. And I think it's too soon to tell what the effect of that's going to be. I haven't gotten any feedback from students because students haven't really gotten any grades yet. So, we may learn something in the next couple of weeks when students finally get their grades. But, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be evasive, but we don't have the data yet. I think, there's been some change. And the thing that the dean has pointed out, and Olav has, I think, agreed with, is that it's not set in stone. We're going to react to what we learn this year and maybe next year, and we're not reluctant to make changes if those changes are necessary. So the jury's out so far, what kind of effect it's going to have. I know some of the things that people think about is it going to affect the degree of cooperation among students? I don't think it will, but we really don't have that evidence yet. And when we do, we'll report back and we'll see whether the effects have been completely positive or certainly more positive and what some of the maybe adverse effects conceivably might be, but I think it's just too soon to tell.
I might just comment on that by saying I recognize that this is among some here, a controversial shift within the school, very controversial for a few people. And I just go back to the history of the founding of the school, which was controversial itself. There were those who said, you're never going to be able to make it in the business world if you're being taught nonprofit organizations, or if you're being taught government service or so forth. You're going to be superficial and thin and unable to compete with the schools that concentrate strictly on business. So that was controversial at the beginning. I think I can safely say that as I observe the careers of the students who've gotten out of this school, I really think that was a very mistaken concept, that they couldn't make it. I'm so pleased with what students who've graduated from this school have gone on to do in public and private and nonprofit organizations. So I have to make that comment because I do recognize you may want to get into more detail on the grading system if you want, but it's in tune with the experimental nature of the school. And there are those here, and I'm sure the dean and the faculty now, who can articulate, I'm not going to, why they've moved to a grading system when everybody took such pride in the early days about the negative aspects, possible negative aspects of grading. So anyway, I'll shut up on it, but let's hear some more. Yeah.
Guy Fish, class of 94, med school class of 85. I was one of the first people to do both medicine and business at Yale, along with my colleague Shuja Ali, who was also class of 94 here. And so as one of those pioneers doing interdisciplinary work at the Yale School of Management, I'm very happy with what I'm seeing as the school continues its multilateral coordination amongst the other schools here. So I applaud you for continuing that trend. I'd like to ask the question about the school's evolution with regard to diversity and its fulfillment of its mission with regard to public, private, and nonprofit. How is the school doing in terms of diversity in minority communities within its admitted classes and graduating classes? I understand there's a large international contingency, but I'm looking at African American communities and other minorities here. And then how is the school doing in its evolution of its mission in terms of the impact on those communities given the very nature of its DNA, which is public, private, and nonprofit?
Good.
So I can be happy to respond to that. I'd be happy to speak to you also about what we're doing jointly with public health and medicine, how we've now built collaboration with the School of Forestry into our executive MBA. But your main question was about the diversity at the school, which is an incredibly important part of who we are as a community. Ellen is absolutely right that we're not satisfied with the percentage of women in the class. I believe we have 37%, the incoming class. If I say that that's similar and probably above average for peer schools, I'm merely generalizing the problem because that's not a satisfactory result. We know that the younger the applicant pool is, the more likely it is going to be gender balanced. We have a program called Silver Scholars where we take a select number of college graduates who spend a year with us, then they go off to work, and then they come back and complete the program. That group is gender balanced, which is exciting, but it's a fairly small group. And I use that as an example because we're looking at ways that we can make the program more attractive and make the program more inclusive on a particular level. In terms of minorities, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe we have 25% minority students in the class of 2016. We have 12% underrepresented minorities in the class. We work very closely with the consortium, particularly focused on African Americans and Latinos. That cooperation is going well. We'd like to strengthen what we do. We have an incredibly dedicated faculty member, Heidi Brooks, who's leading up many of our efforts. We feel that this is not just about percentages coming in. This is about the nature of the community, and particularly the involvement of alumni as mentors and as parts of that community. So I think we're hopeful that we can be an even more diverse community in terms of minority representation and getting closer to parity in terms of gender. I'll flag one additional initiative that we're taking specifically to achieve that. We launched a program a number of years ago called the Global Pre-MBA program. And it's another one, I think, of those quirky things that you will not find at any of our peer schools. It's a program that started with Dean Podolny to essentially bring students from underrepresented communities to Yale School of Management for 2 weeks and to give them an exposure to what management education is like. And the idea was that these were people who perhaps wanted to have an impact on their community, but thought the way to do that is to become a teacher, or to become a minister, or to become a lawyer, and perhaps they hadn't thought about the management toolbox as a way of impacting their community. So that's a group that is gender balanced, very strong on underrepresented minorities. We've now included students from Africa and from parts of Asia that also tend to be underrepresented in US classrooms. And we have our very best senior faculty who teach them for 2 weeks and sort of give them a teaser. And we've been doing this now for 5 or 6 years, and some of the graduates of that program, it's by the way fully funded by alumni, and the students don't contribute to tuition, so it's an extraordinary program. And the first graduates of that program are now actually applying to SOM, and they're also applying to other MBA programs. So there's no silver bullet. I think we want to work hard, the kind of community we want to be, but then also some of these strategic initiatives such as that program, such as the Silver Scholar programs and others to try to be even more balanced and more diverse in our community.
Hi, Malik Rashid from the class of 2004. Art, you talked about the ups and downs that the school has faced over its history. And I suppose for any young institution, you do go through the growing pains of growing into a mature institution. But I'm curious if you can speak to some of the difficult experiences that you had in mind when you talked about the ups and downs. What lessons did we learn from that experience as an institution, and has that made us stronger going forward?
Anybody wants to try
Well, I mean, we had a difficult time around 1988. Many of you know what happened. Many of you know what happened during that period. There were changes within the school. It was a difficult period. I don't think it's worth rehashing that period. You can, as they say, you can look it up. But and those of you who know about it, we've talked already a lot about it. I think the thing that's gratifying about this alumni weekend is to see so many of you, and so many of you who are enthusiastic about the school. The proof of the pudding about how we've succeeded or not succeeded lies in those of you who are here today in this room and the 650 people or so who came here. We have the best alumni. Any institution, a management school or any other institution is going to have growing pains. And we had some growing pains, but we've gone beyond it. When Jeff Garten became dean, it was a tremendously positive step. When Joel Podolny became dean, it was a tremendously positive step. We instituted the new curriculum. We're on a very positive trajectory. And when Dean Snyder came in, we've continued to improve that trajectory. So it's a very exciting time, and the future looks extremely bright. But I'd like to go, I don't think we need to rehash sort of some of the things that were difficult, sort of in any relationship, in any organization. There are always difficult times, and it's behind us. So there's no reason to go back and talk some more about it. Those of us who were here, we talked about it enough. The important thing is that we've moved forward, that the vision that Bill Donaldson, who deserves incredible, it was amazing when Ellen said he was only here for 5 years or whatever. When I heard that, I thought, my God, his legacy is amazing. He contributed so much to the school, well beyond the 5 years that he was actually here. And so the spirit that he imbued in the school, and those of us who were here originally imbued in the school, is still here. And we've moved forward. We've moved beyond the difficult period. We've moved forward, and we've evolved, and we're on a very strong trajectory. But again, I'm looking at all your faces, and I'm thinking about how wonderful this weekend has been for me personally. I met so many of you. You were so happy to be here. I'm gratified that many of you, maybe not all of you, but many of you were happy to see me. And so it's been an incredible experience for me. But please look in the mirror. The greatness of the school it depends on the greatness of its alumni. Sure, it depends on the faculty and the curriculum and the teaching and the administrators, but the greatness of the school depends on the greatness of the alumni. And I'm not just saying this, I believe it. We have the greatest alumni, and we're just so pleased that you've supported the school in such great numbers. And I think that's that's what's most important going forward.
Thanks, Art. Yeah. Go ahead. Please.
Hi, this is Tuff Yen, class of '94. Bill, you may remember me a few years ago. I met with you and looking at your daughter's startup in Bottle Notes in New York City. This is the perfect timing, the question for the future. Little background information so you understand why I asked this question. I'm from Berkeley, Silicon Valley, came to New England, studied business school, and so my career has been in high-tech startup companies and been kind of lonely out there while a few of my classmates were joined in my profession. So I'm really curious, and I'm waiting for this long time to learn, finally today, surprised that Yale is going to entrepreneurial program. So I want to ask you a little more specific, looking into the future. What is this entrepreneurial program? What are the classes? And now, before you answer that, I'll tell you this. I celebrate being part of Yale SOM, and I want the school to be proud of me. But the truth is, there was a painful experience with Yale. I started the largest angel fund group in the country now with about 250 successful men and women from many founders, CEOs, from a large Fortune 500 CEO of AT&T, Chairman Muller, to the guy who founded Hotmail, the guy who invented Apple QuickTime. 5 years ago, I wanted to bring the resource back to the Yale. And I said, well, now I have all these people. I founded a 50 startup company. God, I miss having some Yale involvement. I wrote a long email to Dean Garden, say, hey, this is what I've accomplished. I'd like to come back to recruit 20 summer internships to work in my company, maybe create $1 million seed fund to help Yale Business School start a company. I got an email back said, the dean does not take individual meeting with alumni. And sent me, okay? And I was totally shocked, okay, because I've been away from school for about 15 years, finally got to the position where I can contribute something back to the school. And I was like, what? She said, well, send me an email to some professor of economics, assistant professor of economics, to you contacting him. And I never came back for about 5 years. So I'm so delighted to hear that school is doing something with the internship program, because I do have, the thing I want to contribute is actually giving a small part of the for-profit sector that are for people who are aspiring to be in high-tech startup, that maybe some of the students here I can offer some resource to bridge their gap between school and the real world. And so maybe you can elaborate to me what you plan to do with the Entrepreneurial program, so I can go back and get excited again and come back and find ways. Thank you.
Well, you should be excited, yes. So that would not happen now, first of all. And I think that my rationalization for why that happened is a little bit akin to the founding of the school, which is to say that it took 300 years before Bill and others were able to start the School of Management. And I think we're a little bit behind the ball in terms of entrepreneurship, right? And now we're not behind the ball, we're on top of it or in front of it or somewhere else in relation to the ball, okay? Now, the entrepreneurship, so there's basically three things that we're doing in the area of entrepreneurship. One is greatly expanding the curriculum, and that expansion is in keeping with TED's strategy of integrating the School of Management very well with the rest of the university. So as I said, those classes are open to the whole of the Yale community, which makes incredibly diverse classrooms, which is wonderful because rarely does one start a company with 5 MBAs, right? I mean, it's kind of a team sport, takes some diversity. And that's the first part. The second part is that we're supporting our entrepreneurs through the creation of resources here, like we have incoming scholarships for entrepreneurs, fellowships for graduating entrepreneurs that allow them to defer their educational debt for a brief period. We have an entrepreneurial study suite in this building wherein sit the only MBA students that have desks in the building, right? So there's a handful of entrepreneurs who have desks and they work on their ventures for credit, right? We are also investing very heavily in supporting a culture of entrepreneurship here, which essentially means providing entrepreneurs and people interested in entrepreneurship many opportunities for small positive interactions to celebrate entrepreneurs, to celebrate what they're doing, preferably in the presence of food and booze. Okay, so this is my triad strategy here. Now, in particular, let me tell you about some pieces of the curriculum that I think will maybe personally resonate with you. As I said, I do believe that there's something that makes Yale special and Yale SOM and our kind of in terms of entrepreneurs, we have a broad view of what it means to be an entrepreneur and what industries you might go into, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever. At the same time, high tech captures the imagination of the student body, right? People want to go into high tech. They look at Elon Musk. They look at Mark Zuckerberg, whatever it is. And so we have 2 classes that are related in particular to high technology or software in the entrepreneurship program that are both offered next semester. One is management of software development. And that course teaches mostly MBA students agile team management techniques and a modicum of technology on a very modern web stack, creating scalable mobile-first consumer applications. Because we realize that a lot of our students are going to go manage technical teams in Silicon Valley. They're not going to write code, but they're going to manage technical teams, and they need to be conversant in this. Huge amount of interest in that course already. We are also offering a course that is cross-listed with the School of Management and the Computer Science Department, which is somewhat revolutionary because the Computer Science Department is historically very theoretical, which is entrepreneurship and programming. And that is, the tagline for that course is that it's for Yale students who want to create the next Facebook. And we teach, it is a fire hose of technology and entrepreneurship to them in the hopes that they may land on your doorstep in Silicon Valley and be funded out the wazoo and so on and so forth. So, yes. So that's what we're doing, a lot of things, and I think that we're on the right course, and I don't believe you'll have that experience again in the future.
Yeah.
I probably don't need a microphone. I wanted to ask, or just make a mention about what I think are some potential risks to the school. And I think that what's really attracted so many people here is the tension. The tension of doing so many different things that are different from other people. The idea of self-selection about who applies here. The idea of self-selection and the people that apply here, like myself, who turned down Columbia, Northwestern, Chicago to come here 25 years ago, was a belief in this mission, and that there can be classes about competition without a competitive classroom environment. And that's like really amazing that you can actually get people to work together. And I think that everybody in this room here would say that they've learned as much from their classmates as we have with the teachers. And I think about my 17-year-old son who, as we were sitting looking at Wharton at Penn this summer, says to me, "Dad, really, Yale? Why didn't you follow the path of success?" And you know what? I said to him, that path may not be the path of success, and that you should find your own path and make it yourself. And I think that if we start taking on policies such as grading, and we start looking like other schools because we want to have an identity. You know, an identity and a brand makes it really easy to consume. It makes it really, okay, so I know what Wharton is. Okay, I know what Harvard is. I know what Stanford is. I like it that people kind of don't understand or know what Yale is, other than it being one heck of an intellectual environment. And I'm proud of that, because I don't think anyone who came here wanted to be part of a 2-year vocational program. I think we came here because we wanted to learn. We probably didn't understand the lessons that we were learning until maybe 5 to 10 years later. And that's a powerful statement about this place. And I don't want this place to be so easily consumable. I want it to be where people have to have that self-selection to understand it and to appreciate that we're not all finance students, and that the fact that we could come into this mosh pit with entrepreneurship, international, Yale. Well, then what the heck are you? Well, we want to be all of those things, and in 10 years we're going to throw out half of those things and do something different, because Yale wants to pivot to the change in society the way it expects its alumni to do. And those are my hopes for the school, is to not ever apologize for who you are and what you're going to be, even if you may not know what you're going to be, because the journey is what's exciting. And I want that to be the kind of student that this place attracts for this generation and the next generation.
Okay.
Hi, Jane Mendello, class of '84. I do have a question, but before that, I'd just like to say thank you, Bill Donaldson, for your vision and for fighting for this school and for giving all of us the opportunity to try and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I also want to thank Art Swersey, who taught just about everybody in this room about queuing theory and a lot of other inspirational things. We think about you every time we're stuck in traffic. My question is about the faculty. And with the expansion of the school and the space and the student body, is the faculty also expanding, and is it being successful? Is the school being successful in recruiting the faculty that they would like to have in numbers and in academic discipline?
Yeah, sure. So absolutely. I mean, I think the main opportunity that we see in some sense is with having a larger building, having more office space, potentially having a larger classes, that we can also then have a larger faculty, which we want to keep basically the student to faculty ratio constant, but perhaps have kind of a larger, more diverse faculty, so that we can have more particularly elective offerings in different areas. I think that so far we've been actually quite successful in general on our recruitment. The organizational behavior group, which I'm part of, was roughly kind of 5 to 6 faculty members when I arrived. We're at about 11 right now. We're hoping to go to maybe 14 in the next year or two. So we're probably benefiting a little more from that growth than some of the other areas, but other areas have also been recruiting. I mean, recruiting on the senior side is always difficult. That's true at every school everywhere, and that's that's just the sort of reality of people becoming embedded in communities and then getting hard to move. But we have year after year gotten the junior faculty that we want to hire, and we think that in a large in some ways, you know, maybe the preferred way to grow is to bring people in and have them move up through the, you know, kind of Yale SOM community rather than, you know, trying to recruit all of those people from outside.
Hi. Oh, a few of us over here were going to speak, if that's okay. Hi, Bill. Barbara Leigh Toffler. I am part of a group that is sitting here, and if it's okay with you, after I speak, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Kim Cameron. We are part of the old AdSci group, and we were here. I got my PhD in 78, we're 80 here, 80 over there, 76, and we also have here our faculty, many of them, Garrett Wolf, Clay Alderfer, people who I'm not gonna, well, you weren't faculty at that point, but, I want to put in a pitch, if I may, for organizational behavior. It's sort of very good after you have followed this. Obviously, organizational behavior was embedded in this school when we were here. We are believers in it. You have people in this group, in our, as Kim said this morning or earlier today, we had a little nirvana. We were a true PhD group in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. We had 5 or 6 or 7 most in a class. It was a truly intellectual environment. And we knew Art Swersey, who was on the OR side, and in that day we were OB in Operations Research. But the thing about OB that I want to say, and I will say the same thing I said before, it was the most extraordinary time for me. And by the way, I think 70s at Yale, maybe the buildings were falling apart, but we had Bill and Hillary Clinton were at the law school, Meryl Streep and Henry Winkler were at the rep. I mean, there was a pretty, and we were all here and I have to say, they can introduce themselves, but you have a bunch of business school deans. We all went to business schools because we were in an interdisciplinary program. We were social psychologists and sociologists, and the only places we could get a job were in business schools. My first place that I taught was BU, and I had to ask my department head what ROI meant, because I was not taught by people at business schools. And then I went and taught at the Harvard Business School, which was a whole other story. What I really want to say is that I am disappointed that organizational behavior is not recognized for how powerful it is, that it should be incredibly important. I don't want to take a lot of time, but do know I worked in Japan in the late 90s during the financial crisis. I am not a finance person, I'm OB, and I worked with most of the major banks and Daiwa Securities to sit and meet with them. They were trying to figure out why they had money draining out through their credit system. Well, it turned out to be more of a cultural issue, actually, than a financial issue. They needed OB people to help them explore the culture. Similarly with a mine on the island of Manado and on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia. And I was sent with 2 mining company lawyers who were lecturing the people on why they shouldn't take bribes in Indonesia. And then I and a colleague sat and talked with people and finally helped the lawyers understand what the culture was, why, in fact, it was impossible to come in and lecture and say, please, don't take bribes. What I'm saying is organizational behavior has been enormously effective, and I think that a group of us who are sitting here could give a fabulous seminar for about a semester on how we could be helping all of you in an entrepreneurial way. How are you going to be building cultures, not just building organizations? But I will not say much more, but I wish that you would recognize more that we were all here as a key part of the beginning of this wonderful school. I complimented Bill Donaldson because when he first came in '76, he invited several of us to come in to his office and explain what we did because it was very new for him. But we like to think we're kind of part of the founders, and we hope that you are going to be picking up on some of the extraordinary work that all of the people that I'm sort of speaking for right now, they didn't ask me to speak for them. But I think you can't do what you want to do without people like us. And may I give this?
Thank you. Can I just add to that? When I came here, I really didn't understand the designation organizational behavior. I knew that they were at war in the administrative sciences department with the operations research people, and the organizational behaviors were people, and the operations people were numbers people, and I understood that conflict that existed. But I have to say, that as the school has developed, and I can only really comment intimately with when I was here, but I've observed it obviously closely through the years, I think the organizational behavior defined as all the things you people specialize in, the type of structures, the interplay, et cetera, is one of the distinguishing features of this school, and has been since the beginning. And if I am out in the world and talk to people who hire Yale School of Management graduates, they all say that they have a distinctive characteristic in terms of where they fit in to the organization. The cooperative nature, et cetera, what you teach, which I observe. So I don't think you have to get testimony from all your colleagues here. I think it's been proven what an important part of this school that discipline has been.
I would add that I think it remains an important piece. I mean, if you looked at kind of the pieces of our core curriculum, it's harder to decipher because we're not organizing it the same way as everyone else. But we probably have a larger proportion of our sort of hours that are spent on both issues of kind of social psychology, cognitive psychology, as well as organization design than pretty much any other school out there. It's just that we do a combination of things. One, some of that material is now striped. So for example, I teach organization design, but I teach that through guest lectures in the customer, the competitor, the innovator, integrated management perspectives. And so they effectively get a course on organization design, but it's always taught in conjunction with understanding, well, how does that affect the marketing function? How does that affect the sort of strategy of the firm? How does that affect kind of broader management issues? So I think it really does remain kind of a core piece and something that's kind of distinctive really about the SOM curriculum.
Hi, Kurt Colbert, 94. Let's get touchy-feely here, really. This is SOM. We were down the street there, all over each other in those caves and tunnels and we weren't all from the same disciplines. We were from all different countries and everything. And we come back, and we're just delighted to see each other. No matter how we weren't really tight then, we're so close now. We're so much of a family. And then we come here, and we're awestruck by this baseball stadium of a school. Really, you could play out there. Skyboxes and everything.
You really do not want to play baseball out there, trust me. The one thing you don't want to do.
The way I hit, you could. Anyway,
Please don't.
how do you plan to encourage that same kind of togetherness in this place? You can hide from each other here.
Oh, so I'm really happy to talk about that because we're we're dealing with space issues, believe it or not, for a number of different reasons. I think one of the things that worked out really well, as you may know, we moved into this building in January. Nobody in the world of academia moves into a big building in the middle of the year. Okay, the reason why Dean Snyder pushed for a move in January is to have 2 classes that would have experienced the original buildings and the new buildings. And the student government played an incredibly important role in advising the dean's office and the faculty on how to preserve the culture, what pieces to bring. Just to give you one little example, food for thought was such an important part of the old SOM. We have this dining commons here, so what do we do? How do we adapt? And they created Fit for Thought, so the students run the gym in the basement, for example, which is pretty small, pretty tight place, because obviously the building wasn't designed as a gym. So there's a lot of student involvement. The students in both of those classes that experience both places put a lot of emphasis on how to preserve much of the sort of physical surroundings that were critical for the culture. And we see the students taking advantage of this space. Some students are speaking about the Hall of Rainbows, and maybe at some point that will be just as catchy as the Hall of Mirrors. We've become, for quite some time, we were a net exporter of students looking for study space. Now we're a net importer, which is actually a great thing. So students from forestry and from biology and from anthropology, they come here because they like the facility, and they end up getting to know our students, and they help us integrate more with the rest of you. I do know that building looks very different, of course, from the origins of the school. But if you meet students, our current students, how passionate they are, how committed they are to the mission, how excited they are to connect with the rest of Yale, I think you'll see a lot of what brought you to the school here, and what now sort of reminds you of that time as you meet your peers. I really do think so.
Yeah. Yes, good. With your hand up.
Number 7, class 94. Okay. It's kind of related to that, and a bunch of things that people have said. I know what brought me here in '94 in terms of what I was looking for, but I'm really curious as to what the students today are saying is ultimately why they decided to come to Yale. What are the big things that they're pinpointing as attracting them here?
We have 322 students in the class of 2016 and probably 322 reasons, but here are a couple of common themes. The mission matters a great deal. About a quarter of the students who are in the entering MBA class come from the nonprofit or the public sector. Okay, so a lot of people who've worked in the nonprofit world who feel that in order to have a bigger impact, they want management skills. Right? The very attractive joint degree offering, the connections with the rest of Yale, that this school is part of Yale, is very important to them. And the incredibly strong community. People talk about this, that it feels like a different place, that people are nice to one another, that they collaborate with one another, that the faculty know students, that the students know the faculty, that the doors are open. So those are the things that students speak about the most. The trend that has sort of emerged as a fourth issue, students are beginning to really get excited about, I apologize, I was looking over there and ignored everybody over here, about some of the global opportunities, that we connect with exciting places around the world in innovative ways. Right? So it's the mission, it's the Yale-ness, it's the community, increasingly the global connections.
Judy Cunningham, 89. One of the major factors that drew me to Yale was the involvement of students, because at that time, of course, the school was only 10 years old, and I loved the idea that I would be part of creating the school, as opposed to schools that have been around 100 years, and I felt had very didactic ways of approaching knowledge. And I particularly loved liaison. I don't know how many of you remember that, but it was kind of our student government-ish thing where people would just show up at noon on Wednesday and speak their minds. It was SOM-ish. It was very not led by anyone necessarily or anything, but it was a great experience. And I wonder if that, also there were students on the admissions panels. I wonder what the student involvement is like now and if you've been able to preserve that.
I mean, there's quite a bit of student involvement, both formally and informally. I mean, formally, I would say, kind of most of the committees that have dealt with things from the curriculum to, issues of scale and scope and so forth, we end up including student representatives because we want to hear their voices. There's also informal ways. I mean, one of the things that I'm doing right now, trying to think about how to continue to evolve the integrated curriculum, is that every week I have lunch with a randomly chosen group of students to hear, what are their thoughts? What did they appreciate about the core? What do they feel like could have been improved? What are just, kind of ideas they have for new things that we might think about adding? And there have been some, I think incredibly good ideas out of that hopefully maybe in another year or two, will actually be part of the, maybe the core for everyone.
I don't want to draw the end of this. We're reaching the bewitching hour. I have one announcement to make, which is I want to introduce Ruth McMillan, class of 1979. Ruth is a member of the school's board of advisors. I ask you to say just a few words, Ruth, about the alumni, guess what? Giving.
Class of 79. In the fall of 1977, 84, what I've heard Ellen describe as self-selected pioneers, joined, who had been inspired unbelievably by Bill's vision of what the school could do and what it could help us do for the world, came here. There were, somebody said it was small. It wasn't small, it was non-existent. There were hardly buildings. I remember taking classes, in fact, I was talking to some of my classmates, taking classes from Art Swersey in a room where jackhammers were going like this. We had to wear gloves because it was snowing. The roof wasn't finished. It was true, and here. Yale was small and quirky. I mean, SOM was small and quirky, and while some in the larger Yale community valued it tremendously, there were many who looked on it with disdain, thinking that it was some sort of a low-level trade school. So we felt, and of course we who experienced it knew that it was the future. And we were so excited about being here. And the experience we had was so powerful that we decided, our class was strong on this, that we would do everything we could do to make sure that the experience we had would be available for generations of students to come. So while we were here, we started the internship fund because we thought it was important that people be able to do that. I wish I could remember who thought that idea up, but the class jumped on it. And we started the loan forgiveness program so that people who went into nonprofit or lower paying industries would have an easier time making that choice. When we graduated, we swelled the alumni base to 130 people. Now, there's 650 people here today, so that's a big change. My class, my classmates and I, didn't have much in the way of money, but we wanted to think of every way we could possibly make a statement to the larger Yale community that the experience we had here was really special and was really important and really needed to be built on and continued. So we came up with the idea that since we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of power, we were working at fairly low-level jobs and wherever we were, that we would distinguish ourselves by having incredibly high participation in the Alumni Fund. It was the only thing we could think of that would actually be a metric that could be judged by other people. So I'm proud to say that except for 1 year, my class has led the Alumni Fund participation percent every year. I've been a class agent off and on during that time. It's not a hard job because everybody still wants to make a statement about how important this school has been and continues to be. Now, fast forward 35 years, we're in this magnificent building, still growing into it. You've heard over the last day or so of some of the incredibly ambitious programs that are underway here. I would say that every one of them, including the Entrepreneurship program, was something that attracted us here in the first place. And so 35 years later, we may finally be getting it right. But we're doing so many exciting things. The school looks to be wealthy, but the operating budget shows a deficit this year, and it needs to be closed by support from the Alumni Fund. You may not be aware of it, but the school has subsidized a very large portion of your experience here this weekend because it's reaching out to alumni to make sure that you continue to stay connected to the school. So my plea to all of you is join my class, become a every day, every year supporter of SOM, help us have our participation in the Alumni Fund be really strong as a statement to the rest of the world, and just become a regular donor. And for that, I thank you. And now I'd like to invite Chris Thomas, class of 09, so 30 years after me, to come up and make a couple statements.
We've had so much harmony over the last couple days, and I hate to challenge Ruth on class participation. But I do know that the class of 09 had 100% upon graduation, which was a record for the school at that time. But I think the more important part is that our School of Management as a whole is beating every school save Tuck in the nation and every college at Yale. We're all incredibly involved in giving. I'm the only thing standing between all of us and drinks, so I'm going to be a little more brief. What I want to focus on is I just want to hit on something that Art said. We have the best alumni in the nation. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is that we had the best support while we were students. And what are we all investing in when we're giving? And by way of background, when I graduated with a classmate, we founded a venture capital platform. We're now raising our second fund, and so I'm very attuned to going out and raising capital. It's not an easy thing to do. But when I go out, I always get the questions, what have you invested in, and what are you going to invest in? And we've invested, I believe, in the strongest portfolio of companies in our sector. But the people that are about to give money are less interested in that. They're more interested in what are you about to invest in? Where are you going to put my capital? And why should I give you some? And the reason for that is because, well, we are looking at the best pipeline in the world with companies coming into our sector. When I think about Yale, when I think about the School of Management, the students that we want to continue to bring to this institution, the students that all of you represent, and I believe strongly, we do have the best alumni in the world. When we're asking for an investment, when we're asking for your capital to be put toward all of these programs, this building is fantastic. These professors are amazing. The programs that we put in place are just unbelievable. But at the end of the day, it's the people that your dollars are going toward. When you're being asked to give, you're saying, how do we ensure that we have the next Kelly Smith? We have the next Nate Heller, God bless us all, we have the next Jesse Acosta, who will be coming to this school, and that will be a part of what we are to continue this legacy going forward. So I would like to join Ruth and everyone here in asking, there's people from the development office outside of this room right now waiting to talk to you. There's different ways you can give. You can give financially. I had the privilege being able to give a donation this year with Chris Cheever that we're very proud of being able to do. But whether it's with your time, whether it's with your money, but give what you're able to give. Understand that it's not just going toward things. It's going toward people. It's going toward the most important thing that builds our legacy and pushes the Yale School of Management forward around the world, the ideals that we represent in building leaders and educating leaders for business and society. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just say one more thing. There's a little clock down here, and it says it's 5:08, and I said that I was going to be cut off rudely if we didn't end at 5. So we're a little bit over time. But I just want to say that what a really great pleasure it is for me to see all of you here and to hear you talk and to hear the faculty talk. And I just hope that, you'll be responsive to the call for support and funds, but I also hope that the spirit of SOM will continue. The spirit of experimentation, of we don't have all the answers. We need the tools taught to us by pros, but then we need to apply those tools in ways that we learn, not just from the faculty, but from each other. So my hope is that you will, despite the fact that it's after 5, and I know you're all going to section or class dinners and things like that, I hope you'll continue the conversation and the questioning and continue not only give your support, your financial support, but give your intellectual support, both pro and con to what's being done here now, because it's not all perfect. It's under development. We're learning from it. We're learning from what our students are able to do when they go out in the big wide world. So I hope we'll keep that spirit of inquiry and of change that's right at the core of the school. So, speak.
Well, we have a gift for Bill, and it's very consistent with this theme of evolution. And there's a bit of nostalgia also, because while we're in this fantastic, iconic building, some of the buildings that were very near and dear to our heart are now gone. And if you do walk down Sachem Street across from Ingalls Rink, you'll notice that that whole area has been leveled, because that's where they're going to put the new Yale colleges. So even though we have this fantastic cafeteria here at SOM, where we used to have breakfast and lunch at Donaldson Commons, is no longer. But. Oh
my God. Oh, look at that. That's great. Thank you.
So, believe it or not, there's several hundred signatures on this brick of the people who are here today. So, Bill, thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you have done. And
thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you all. That's great. That's great.